Hello everyone, I am Dr. Parul Malhotra, Associate Professor, Jagannath University. In the today's video, we will study about oral and written communication. We'll be studying about the meaning of oral and written communication, and then we will also learn about the advantages and disadvantages of oral and written communication. So, to begin with, the oral communication, what is oral communication? Oral communication refers to spoken messages that we transmit by producing sounds. Oral communication generally involves both verbal and non-verbal symbols. Mostly, we spend a great deal of time participating in verbal communication, both as speakers and listeners. Oral messages are continuous with words and sounds spoken and uttered in a connected way. So, oral communication is spontaneous and flexible. It is generally the face to face verbal communication that we undertake daily, we called as oral communication, which happens through the spoken words. The face to face communication and the telephonic conversations are the very common examples of oral communication. Oral communication using spoken words through a channel, the media in direct or indirect form. The information here is passed only in the form of sound. The conversation is an oral mode of communication which can take place face to face, over the phone, or via voice messages. In oral communication, spoken words are used. Examples include face to face communication, speech, telephonic communication, video, radio, television, and voice over messages over internet. It is influenced by the pitch of the voice, loudness of the voice, speed of what you speak, and the clarity of the speech. Now, let us look at the advantages of oral communication. The first advantage of oral communication is adjustment of a message. The speaker gets immediate feedback from the receiver, which helps him to find out how he receives the messages and how he reacts to it. The immediate feedback not only lets the communicator know the kind of response from the receiver, but it also helps him to modify his message in such a way that it becomes readily and favorably acceptable to the receiver. Second advantage of oral communication is immediate clarification. The communicator or the sender of the message can clarify certain ideals in his message which are not properly understood by the receiver or which might leave some doubts in his mind. These doubts or queries of the receiver arise from the defective message, and these are communicated to the receiver in the form of feedback. This means that whenever there is a doubt in the mind of the receiver after receiving a message from the sender, in oral communication there is a possibility for the immediate clarification, as both sender and receiver are in the proximity to each other and they are actually in the talking terms, that is face to face or over a telephone call. So they can ask for the immediate clarifications. The third advantage of oral communication is time. Oral communication happens instantly. It is an immediate communication as both sender and receiver are face to face. The fourth advantage is persuasion and control. The speaker can judge the replies of the other party and can change his arguments in such a way that there he can influence the attitude, feelings, opinions, and beliefs of the receiver. The oral directives and instructions are effective in controlling the employees and the situations in order to ensure the fulfillment of the objectives. This means that sender is in a better position to control the behavior of the receiver. He can also persuade and motivate him towards any kind of attitude, feeling, opinion, or belief very easily in an oral communication situation. Next point is formality. Oral communication is less formal than the written communication. Informal communication can help in building friendships and personal relations between the communicator and the receiver. As oral communication can happen in any kind of situation, whether it is in office, at home, or at a workplace, or with friends, with anyone. So it depends. It is at times formal and it is at times informal. And this informal communication helps in building the friendships and the personal relations between sender and the receiver. The next point is cost. Oral communication is not as costly a process that of a written correspondence, especially when the message is communicated within the organization. That is, if for written communication we need pen, paper, or we need a certain medium to write our message and then transmit it to the receiver. But oral communication usually happens by the spoken messages, so it is very less time consuming and it is very cheap as compared to the other forms of communication. Now let us look at the disadvantages of oral communication. The first disadvantage of an oral communication is future references. The oral messages cannot be referred back in the future if they are not tape recorded. That is, if you intentionally record any oral message, only then you can use it for the future references or for in the court proceedings. But in other cases, oral messages cannot be referred back. As compared to a written message, oral messages do not constitute the permanent record. Therefore, it has little or no value for the legal procedures. It cannot become a legal evidence in case of future disputes or lawsuits, and oral records can easily be tampered with also. Then the second disadvantage of oral communication is the speaker's preparedness. An effective oral communication can be fruitful only if the speaker is prepared very effectively, very confidently for his speech or for whatever he has to speak. It can be good and effective if the communicator is good speaker. If the communicator is not a good speaker, then oral communication is not at all effective. A speaker requires to be very lively, enthusiastically vital, earnest, and keenly interested in the subject. Lengthy messages. Oral communication is not at all a suitable medium for any kind of lengthy official messages that constitutes very minute and the small details. A message which needs a lot of facts, lot of figures, a lot of citations, references, or if there are a lot of minute details to be included, then the lengthy messages are being, then the written messages are always being taken into consideration. Now let us understand what is written communication. So written communication obviously means communication through written or printed words. Written communication is more formal and literate and follow rules of grammar strictly. The written media is like the human sensory organs and memory power, which receives, analyzes, and records the information for the purpose of decision making in the future. Written media helps to coordinate the knowledge and work of the staff specialist and the research specialist. There is a need for accurate written information to carry out management and other professional duties. The main purpose of written communication is to move, motivate, and mold the minds and behavior of the people. So it is a necessity for the communicator to study the minds of people he wishes to target through his writing. It must be remembered that art and skill of writing depends on the competence, knowledge, and vocabulary of the communicator or the writer. Besides all this, the writer should prevent his feeling from dictating his thinking and should organize his thoughts in such a manner that they are linked to each other and they are based on the right and the factual information. When information is delivered in the written form, we call it as written communication. Letters, emails, texts, research reports, handbooks, or posters, even flyers or the post on the social media are also considered communication, and these are all written communication. In written communication, written signs or symbols are used to transmit information. A handwritten message might be typed or handwritten. Messages can be sent via email, letter, report, note, and other kinds of written communication. The message in written communication is influenced by the vocabulary and grammar used, as well as the writing style, precision, and clarity of the language used. The most popular mode of written communication is corporate communication. As a result, it is considered one of the most valuable commercial talents. Let us look at the advantages of written communication. Written communication always provides us with a permanent record. Written messages can be kept in file as a permanent record of general, like the fares, transactions, agreements, MOUs of the business's organization. It remains as an evidence of the company's performance, which is useful for the future references. It forms a basis for new policy decisions and also for the fresh measures for the development and expansion of the business. Second, is the legal evidence. As written messages can be used as the permanent record, they provide a tangible evidence of the agreements signed between the two particles, two parties, two peoples, or two organizations. It also gives the proof of the stages in which the transaction was carried out. It can show how the mistakes were committed in carrying out the transactions by either of the parties involved in it. The third advantage of written communication is the accuracy. Usually, the written messages are more organized than the oral messages. They are used in much formal manner. They use standard language. They try to avoid the colloquial or the confused expressions. And as compared to oral messages, the written messages are more accurate in the grammatical structure. Accuracy in written messages helps to prevent any kind of misunderstandings or misinterpretation of the messages. As we talked about that oral communication is not suitable in the lengthy messages, but here for the written communication, lengthy messages are an advantage. All the lengthy messages can be very effectively used through the written communication as they can provide a better clarity. Now, understand the limitations of the written communication. Written communication media is limited to literates only. There are millions of illiterate people who cannot use this media. Second, it is a costly and a time consuming process. By costly and a time consuming process, we do not mean that it involves huge cost or a lot of time, but if we compare it with the oral communication, written communication is a costly and a time consuming process. A number of people get involved in the process of collecting information, consulting, drafting, typing, and posting the messages. It takes the total cost of a business letter to not less than 20 rupees. Secondly, the oral messages reach almost instantly on the telephone, whereas a letter may reach to the receiver after 2-3 days. Plus, one important thing that the sender and receiver are always face to face in the oral communication, whereas in the written communication they are apart. So that is why there is we call it as that it's not possible that whenever the sender is sending the message, receiver is there to receive the message. It may some take time for the receiver to take the message. And the next feedback limitation is the delayed feedback. In oral communication, the feedback is almost immediate as discussed earlier. Why? In written communication, the feedback is always delayed. I hope you are all clear about what is oral communication, what is written communication, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each type of communication, and you can make a comparison of these two. Thank you so much.